All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Unit 3. We are finally getting to our Ornamental and Turfgrass textbook, and we're going to start off with a lecture entitled Cultural Management for Turfgrasses. I do recommend that you read the chapter prior to watching the lecture. I know some of you guys had some questions on the discussion board and through emails that when taking the exams, I've always recommended to pre-read. You have your reading assignments first, so go ahead and read the chapter. Come back and view the PowerPoint, and then you'll answer your homework questions, the week prior to the exam. With the exam for Unit 2, I was quite happy with the results of the tests that were taken, and based on the average, previous classes, you guys are doing an awesome job, and I really appreciate the hard work that you're putting into it. Well, let's go ahead and get started with cultural management for turfgrasses. It is not the first chapter that you've had to read in your O&T, but it's going to talk, it's these chapters that are dealing directly with turfgrass, and then we're going to finish up the semester talking about your ornamentals. So let's go ahead and get started. Cultural practices, they are your first line of defense against pests. Number one, you've heard me talk about it before. Good, healthy turf is not going to have weeds. Good, healthy turf is not going to have insects. Good, mown correctly turf is not going to have any of the pests. So the cultural practices that you take, if it's in your home lawn or if it's for your clients, you're going to reduce the number of pests that you're going to have. Having that nice, healthy stand of turf is going to be your first line of defense. It's going to promote the dense growth. Cultural practices naturally promote it. And when you're dealing with the turf grasses and the cultural practices, you're going to have to realize the type of turf that you're dealing with. Or do we have a cool season grass? Do we have a warm season grass? Cool seasons, we're actually going to see both here in the Piedmont. We're in that transition zone where we can have either warm season grass or cool season grass. It's all based on personal preference. I'm a big fan of cool season grass. For one, it allows me to plug and seed in the fall. And there's more things that I can do to generate income for my company if my client has cool season grass. Warm season, though, they're nice. They're just as nice. Reminds you of being at the beach. I mean, that's, a good thing about having the warm season grass. So we're going to take a look at some pictures of those in the next few slides. I apologize if the pictures are not as good a quality, but, teaching this class online makes it just a little bit difficult to have good pictures, but most of these pictures I got from turf files in NC State. So if you googled the turf files in NC State, it's going to pull up that website, and they're going to have articles and presentations on each type of grass. They have pretty much anything you want to know about turf grass on that website. For turf grass selection, you're gonna have to know what the turf is being used for. Is it a home lawn, an athletic field, or a golf course? Because each one of those require different maintenance levels. They require different shade tolerances, some like full sun. So you really need to know what that site's going to be used for. A home loan, probably a little bit easier to take care of than an athletic field or golf course. Those are big businesses, working in golf course and actually being a superintendent for a golf course or being a superintendent for a baseball or football field. If you choose the correct grass based on its site use, you're going to have fewer pests. It's just naturally going to be that way. And then, are you going to select a warm season or a cool season grass? Warm season grasses, they grow best in the southern U.S. Optimal growth occurs when the air temperatures are 80 degrees or higher. That's air temperature. Most become dormant when the average daily temperatures drop to 50 degrees or below. When they say dormant, they're going to turn brown. They're actually going to look dead. And a lot of people have problems with that. They don't want a brown lawn, especially the time of the holidays, family coming over. So we're in that transition zone again where we can have the warm seasons, but they're going to go dormant. They're going to be brown, crunchy, and kind of not so pretty during the winter. And then the cold tolerance and other characteristics vary among the species and the cultivars. Several warm season species produce only small quantities of seed. and they're difficult to germinate. Therefore, we're going to have to establish them by vegetation means. That's going to be small pieces of sod called plugs. And just think about it. If you were in the lab this morning for horticulture equipment that I helped with Lisa, you saw the plugs that we were pulling using the plugger. Well, typically, a deeper core about that long, you're going to get those plugs, and then you're going to plug like we did, and then you're going to take those sod plugs and you can stick down in the hole. You can vegetatively produce it that way. Sprigs, they're pieces of rhizomes and stolons. I've had a chance to do a sprig job twice. We did a croquet court at one of the retirement homes that we mowed. I actually that was part of my job working for my dad. I worked mainly with that croquet court, cutting it close, keeping the weeds out of it, spraying it. Well, we had a hard freeze one winter, and it killed the turf. So what we did is went and got the sprigs and sprinkled the sprigs on top of the old sod, covered it with a sand base, and then those sprigs took hold and came up through it. Sprigs, it's a little bit easier than doing the plugs, and probably a little bit cheaper, but then you still got to deal with the sand and all that. Or we can use sod, thin strips of the turf grass and soil. So you have actual farms that produce this sod, farms that produce the sprigs and the plugs. So that's their primary business is growing this grass and selling it either retail or selling it to landscape contractors to install these grasses vegetatively. And then here's a good chart. I hope you can see my mouse moving. Here we have North Carolina. And see, we're in this transitional zone. Good old Forsyth County, Winston-Salem, Piedmont Triad is in this transitional zone, meaning that we can grow warm season grasses and cool season grasses. The mountains, pretty much going to be cool season grasses. Towards the coast, and even down here a little bit warmer, you're going to see only warm season grasses. But where we're at, we can have warm season and cool season. And there are some, being in the transition zone where we're at, we're going to see more of a zoysia type grass here, maybe some centipede, but primarily we're going to see Bermuda and the zoysia grass here and in this transition zone. It might be a little difficult to get some of the other warm season grasses to grow that we see along the coast. They may not like these cooler temperatures, and they could have that hard freeze one winter and actually kill the sod or kill the turf. All right, your warm season grasses, they're going to be growing most of the time in the summer. Spring and fall. In the fall it's slowing down a little bit. Winter, we're not having any growth. And look at the roots in the summer, getting a lot deeper. So, warm season grasses, they're going to grow in the warmer seasons. They don't like the cool and cold. Some of them can withstand it. They're going to go dormant. They're going to protect themselves by going dormant. And you're not going to have any growth. You're not going to have any color either. It's going to actually look like a dead lawn. Some warm season grasses that your book talks about. We have Bermuda grass, common and hybrid. Common is probably what you're going to see in shrub beds too, as a weed, because some of these grasses can be weeds. Well, pretty much any type of grass that's growing in the lawn that shouldn't be there is a weed. If you have a zoysia grass, full lawn area of zoysia, and you've got some Bermuda in it, that Bermuda is termed a weed then, correct? Well, we have centipede grass, Baja grass, St. Augustine grass, zoysia grass, seashore paspalum, and then carpet grass. Now we're going to look at some pictures of those, and like I said before, go to Turf Files at NC State, and you actually see you'll see these same pictures, but they may be a little bit clearer for you. Bermuda. Hybrid cultivars are the result of crosses between the Bermuda grass species. There's all kinds of cultivars of Bermuda grass, and guys, people, they get their PhD in some of these Bermuda grasses, so they spend their entire graduate studies studying a species such as Bermuda grass and developing cultivars from it. So there's many of them. They are propagated vegetatively and exhibit improved characteristics. And these are your hybrid cultivars. Hybrids produce a high-quality turf and require a higher level of maintenance than most other warm season grasses. These are your golf courses. These are your athletic fields. You're going to have these hybrid Bermudas. Improved hybrids are used on better quality lawns, sports area golf courses. Common Bermuda grass produces a lower quality turf. It's probably what you're going to see. Somebody that doesn't take care of their lawn, Bermuda's pretty much going to take over, especially if the neighbor's got it. It's going to creep over and get in your lawn. And there's nothing wrong with having common Bermuda grass as your lawn. We actually have a client that has that. We've talked to them about spraying it out. They're like, no, turn it brown in the winter doesn't buy me, because we'd plug and seed. We plug and seed the fescue, and we're like, you need to spray that. Let us spray it with Roundup. No, just throw some throw some seed out. It'll keep it green during the winter. He's correct. The seed would come up. We'd do that landscape blend. It would come up. It would stay green through the winter. But eventually that Bermuda, when it takes hold again in the spring, when it starts getting warmer, it's going to choke out the fescue, and by the end of the summer, it looks like he has a total Bermuda lawn. Your common requires less maintenance. It is propagated by seed, and that's the one good thing. You can actually buy the Bermuda grass seed. And now actually, and right here I was getting ready to mention it, but I'm reading this. Both types of Bermuda grasses have stolons and rhizomes and are poor in the shade. But the common, there is a Bermuda grass that they have developed that can be sown and grow in the shade. And that was just recent. That was within the last year or two. I haven't seen it. I haven't dealt with it. But having a Bermuda grass that can grow in the shade is going to be pretty awesome, because Bermuda grass is this common Bermuda grass is tough old grass. It's hard to kill. And here we have a picture, and courtesy of NC State. And I really wish we had a lab to see on campus. But the good thing is, guys, I'm not going to test you on identification of this. If we actually had a turf lab, yes, that would probably be part of my curriculum. But here I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what it's looks like. But if you go out in your yard, guaranteed pretty much any lawn that you've got is going to have some Bermuda grass in it. St. Augustine. It's coarse textured, has strong stolons, and is excellent in the shade. So if you have a client that wants warm season grasses, this is one that you'd want to use for the shade. Used in the warmest areas of the warm season zone, so it's not going to grow here. Down in Wilmington, yes, you hear guys talk about cutting St. Augustine and taking care of it, but you're not going to see that here in the Triad. But move down there, you got a client that wants some good shade trees, and he wants good grass, would use St. Augustine. A major lawn grass in the deep south, and it is propagated vegetatively. Now, I could ask you some questions. What would be a good warm season grass to use in the shade? And I'd give you a list of multiple choice, and of course St. Augustine could be one of those answers, guys. Here's a picture. Look, it is a little more coarse textured looking compared to the Bermuda grass. Baja grass, adapted to the warmer regions of the south, has coarse, tough leaf blades, spreads by short rhizomes and stolons, and very drought tolerant. So we might want to use Baja grass if a client doesn't want to have an irrigation system. This would be the perfect grass for that. Produces unattractive seed heads and relatively resistance to pests. So you want a client that's very earthy and organic, and you're living towards the coast. They don't want to have irrigation because they want to conserve water. We'd use Baja grass. They don't want to use chemicals or pesticides because this is relatively resistant to pests. You'd want to suggest Baja grass for this client. So, could be test questions again, guys. I'm not going to ask you to identify it, but I'm going to ask you characteristics of these grasses, and you will see information like that on your exams. But there's Baja grass. Kind of reminds me more of a little towards the Bermuda. The blades are a little bit thinner, but this is actually going to grow taller than the Bermuda grass. And you see the unattractive seed heads, but it can withstand not being mowed so close as some of your other warm seasons. Seashore Paspalum, coarse and fine textured types. Very tolerant of high salt levels, so it's going to be used quite a bit at the coast, and popular where You can't grow any other grass because of the salt. Propagated from stolons, rhizomes, or sod. And here you have an actual picture of it. Looks like it's got some rust, part of that. But we'll talk more about that when we get to turfgrass diseases. Centipede grass, primarily vegetative establishment, poor wear tolerance. So you would not want to use this near playgrounds or school campuses because you're going to have a lot of foot traffic. Anywhere you've got that problem, you wouldn't want to use centipede grass. It's a minimal maintenance species, so it doesn't require it, and used where quality is not as important. So you wouldn't want to use it in residential. You want a nicer turf, and you wouldn't want to use it anywhere that's going to have a lot of foot traffic. But there's a good picture of it, and that's actually a good picture. And I would love to do this one day here for the campuses, have little boxes of this turf that we could actually show you guys. But until then, we're going to look at pictures and again go to turf files. Zoysia, Japanese lawn grass, most widely used zoysia grass. You'll see a lot of the not as much as fescue guys here in the triad, but if you see a warm season grass, it's either going to be Bermuda or zoysia. Best low temperature tolerance of the warm season grasses. It's used here because it can withstand those cooler nights, and it is vegetatively propagated. Manila grass is a finer texture and less cold tolerant of the zoysia species. Whoops, need to go back one. Do apologize for that. There's a good picture of zoysia grass. Look how dense and thick that is, and that really feels so great to walk on barefoot. Common carpet grass, poor low temperature and drought tolerance, so it's going to need irrigation, and it's not going to like these cooler nights. Unattractive due to the coarse texture and the many coarse seed heads produced. Used on minimal maintenance sites, especially if poorly drained. So if you got a wet spot and you need some turf, you'd want to use this. And there is common carpet grass. Winter overseed. In many southern areas, the warm season grasses become dormant. I don't know why I keep saying dormant, but dormant. In the winter, dormant turf is easily damaged if it receives much traffic. You wouldn't want to have a lot of foot traffic. You wouldn't want to mow over it, sucking up leaves that have fallen because that could damage it. And then sports areas and higher quality lawns may be seeded with a cool season grass in the fall, just like what we did for that client. And we went back over it with the blend. A lot of people actually use a ryegrass, which is going to die when it gets hot anyway. And then that warm season grass is taken over. And in the spring, the turf transition back to the warm season grass. So, you could still do some fall overseeding like we did in horticulture equipment lab this morning. If they have the warm season grass, we could use like a perennial ryegrass or annual ryegrass or even a blend. And the good thing about the ryegrass is they do, they're going to die out when it gets hot. The perennial is going to keep coming back and back, but the annual, you're going to sow it. Once the heat gets here and kills it, it's dead. It's gone. Cool season grasses. All right. They grow best in the northern United States. Optimal temperature range is 60 to 75 degrees. Winter hardiness and other characteristics are vary among the different species and cultivars. And again, cool season grasses, we can grow from here towards the mountains. Possibly, you might see some cool season grasses down in Raleigh and stuff like that. But pretty much, from this zone westward through the state is where you're going to see our cool seasons. And compare this to the warm season grass chart. In the winter, we got a little bit of, growing, but when we hit spring, boom, this guy is really cooking. He is moving. In the summer, grasses, they're going to slow down. They're going to get heat stress. They're going to they're just, these cool season grasses don't like these hot summers that we can have, and that's why you'll see a lot of fescues and stuff like that die. They'll actually turn brown, look yucky, but yes, you can add some irrigation to it and that'll prep it up. But if we have a hot, dry summer, our fescues are going to take a hit, and that's when we're going to do our fall aeration and seeding, and then we're going to get some root development. We talked about 18-24-12. We're going to get these roots to growing. And then again, winter, it's going to slow down a little bit. But a cool season grass will look healthy during the winter. It's not going to turn brown. It's not going to look crappy. You can actually have a green lawn in the winter with your cool season grasses, and even in the summer with some irrigation. But look at this root development in the springtime for our cool season. All right, Kentucky bluegrass, a cool season grass, widely used on lawns, sports fields, golf course fairways. Didn't say greens. Remember, it said the fairways. Has a vigorous rhizomes, many strengths and abilities due to the availability of over 100 cultivars. That's a lot of different types of Kentucky bluegrass, guys. Poor shade tolerance and a low and a slow establishment rate are two common weaknesses. And here we can see it on baseball. Good dark, almost like a dark bluish color for your Kentucky bluegrass. There are two types of annual bluegrass. We have poana, and then we have poreptans. The former is the true annual, dying after the seed production in the spring, and the latter is a weak perennial, sometimes called creeping bluegrass. And there are many other biotypes. Guys, with this, remember I talked about the croquet court. We had a hybrid Bermuda on the croquet court. Well, we had one season that we had a lot of poana come up in it. We sprayed it, got rid of it, but still it would come back the following year because of the seeds. It really, really produces a lot of seeds, a lot of seed heads. So we killed it, but still had the seeds. It come back next year. But the sad thing is, poana can be a golf green if you wanted to do that. I mean, you can use it. There are people that use it for that. But when you have a hybrid Bermuda and you have poana come up in it, you've made that grass a weed. See what I'm saying? That these grasses, some of them just don't go together. If you have a complete athletic field of hybrid Bermuda or Kentucky bluegrass and you started getting poana all in it, even though poana can be used for the same purpose, it becomes a weed when it's mixed in with what was supposed to be there. Annual type, considered a weed because it is intolerant of drought, heat, and cold, and dies out readily. Persistent because it produces large amounts of seed, and particularly persistent in closely mown turf such as that found on golf courses. So another type of the poana is going to be a weed because areas of like the croquet court and the golf course are mown really, really low. There is a picture of your annual bluegrass. Perennial type. Whoops. Previous. All right. Perennial type. Fine leaf textured, very high density, produces short stolons and fewer seeds than the annual type. Better tolerance of environmental conditions than your annual type, and often found on greens is referred to as the greens type. Greens type grass. And there is your perennial bluegrass. And growing it in a nice little bucket like that for for identification purposes. All right, perennial ryegrass. Now, non-creeping, it's a bunch type. Rapid establishment, and guys, really seriously, you'll see a lot of home builders when they hire their landscape contractors to do the installation and they need grass up immediately. You're going to use ryegrass because it's going to come up fast, a lot quicker than the fescue. Bad thing about using perennial ryegrass and fescue together, it can actually choke out your fescue because the perennial is going to grow, the ryegrass is going to grow so quick that it's going to choke out the fescue that you've just sown. So yes, there's times when you're going to have to seed twice for the builder, especially if he's built a house and into the summer and it's getting cooler. Use this ryegrass. It's going to look great throughout the winter, but the heat's going to kill it. Even some cold hardiness problems just depends on how cold it gets, but it likes the cooler temperatures. It'll look great all winter. As soon as the heat comes on in the spring, your ryegrass is gone. It wears well and can be mown relatively close. If you've got perennial ryegrass, if you sow that on a new home, you're going to have to mow it in the winter. Used on lawns, sports fields, golf course fairways, and often mixed with Kentucky bluegrass. And you'll see ryegrass in a lot of landscaper choice blend grass seeds. And there's a good picture of it. Creeping bentgrass, aggressively spreading stolons. And again, we're on cool season grasses, and we're talking about spreading through stolons, right? Underground. This is what you're going to see golf course greens here. Pretty much if you go to one of the, if we go to one of the golf courses that I can't afford to play at, it's going to have creeping bentgrass. If I can afford to go play golf there, it's probably going to have a common Bermuda. But it's very cold tolerant. Good to have around here. It can be cut extremely close. They're going to cut it every day at the golf course. And it's a high maintenance requirement, primarily used on golf greens, tees, and fairways. You couldn't afford to put this grass in a residential home. You've got to have somewhere that you can generate money, and playing golf on it every day is going to do that. And I don't know if there's a golf course here in town that actually has it in the fairways. I know of a few golf courses that has it on the greens and the tee boxes. And the thing about the creeping bentgrass, you ever drive by a golf course and see big fans set up on the tee boxes or on the greens? If they've got the fan set up on a hot day like it is today, they've probably got creeping bentgrass for their green or tee box. That fan is keeping that dead, stale, hot air from just settling on that bentgrass. It cannot stand it. It's got to stay cool. So they cool it off with the fans and irrigation to keep it alive during these hot summers. But the good thing about it, it's going to stay green throughout the winter. So you may see a golf course with the fairways, well, definitely the roughs are going to turn brown. Some of them may have a different type of grass in the actual fairways. But if you see this lush green mowed close grass on a golf course in the wintertime, it's probably going to have the bent grass on it. Well, there it is. But a lot of times, if it gets really, really hot, you'll see a big old fan sitting here or one over here, just keeping that air circulating so it don't, to keep it cool. Tall fescue, probably pretty much what everybody's got in their yards around here now. Major strengths are its heat, drought, and wear tolerance. Lack of cold tolerance results in it primarily be used on lawns in the transition zone and the southern parts of the cool season zone. It's non-spreading. It's a bunch type grass and fewer pest problems than most turfgrass species, but does not tolerate close mowing. Your book, I think it states what? I know we're going to get to that at the end, but it's kind of weighing on my mind. I can't remember what the book said. 2 to 3.5 inches. It's crazy to mow fescue at 2 inches, in my opinion. I mow my fescue at 4.5 inches, and it looks good every time I do it. I would never mow fescue at 2 inches. I have mowed it at 3.5, but I love it at the 4.5 inch height. And there is a picture of tall fescue. Pretty much what you're going to see here on campus at school, if you're in the classrooms here for other classes, or pretty much what's in every residential lawns here in the Triad. Fine fescues. There are 5 grasses that are grouped together and called the fine fescues. Slender creeping fescue, the strong creeping, the chewings, the hard fescue, the sheep fescue. And I believe your book talks about red fescue. I've sown some red fescue because it's very good for shade tolerance for a client that had a lot of willow oaks. And the good thing about the fine fescue, I like that fine texture. I really do. K31 and stuff, it's a little wider blade. This right here is almost like you're walking on hair. Though differences occur between the fine fescues, they generally have the following characteristic: the fine leaf texture, drought and shade tolerant, slow to spread, very slow, slow vertical growth, correct, and then require low levels of maintenance. Cultivars and pest management. Well, one way Uh, one way to keep down on our pest, when we're talking about pest here, we're talking about weeds, grassy weeds and broadleaf weeds. Use only certified turfgrass seed. You can read the label on the turfgrass seed bag. You want like a 99% weed-free grass seed, so you don't have to deal with the weedy grasses and the broadleaf grasses. And then select a cultivar that's going to be correct for the situation or the site. Cultivars are genetically different groups within a species. And you're going to see different cultivars in your grass seed mix. Some of them are going to contain an endophyte, which is a fungus that's actually going to go after the insects. And then always use a blend of cool season grasses. And when you use a blend of grass seed, guys, say there's a fungus that comes out and attacks one particular grass or one cultivar of the same species, and it kills it. Well, if you had a lawn full of that whole grass, you've just lost the entire lawn. But if you've used a blend of grass seeds and one of the grasses in the mix is subject to the disease, it's not going to kill the entire lawn. It's just going to affect that seed or grass that's in the lawn itself. So you've got a backup. Not everything, not your entire lawn is going to be killed. Site prep, we always want to kill the weeds first. Let's start out. We plug and seed, late summer, early fall. If we have weeds in the lawn, we'd want to go ahead and kill the weeds first. If it's a new site, we want to make sure that the drainage is taken care of, that we have slope. We want a minimum of slope of 2% of turf areas away from any building. And compaction. Running the core aerator or running the aerator, you're going to want to eliminate some of that compaction. Then you're going to want to make sure that you've got airflow through it and that the humidity's right. And if there's a shaded area, what type of grass would you want to need for the shade? Do you need to remove some trees? Do you need to limb up some limbs to take care of the shade? And I'm referring back to your textbook to make sure that I am covering things that you need to have covered. Yeah, even the book talks about the large electric fans for the airflow and the humidity to keep that bent grass cool. Shade, again, limit up trees if you need it, or if you need to remove a tree. Depends on what's more important to you, a healthy turf or a tree, or using that correct grass underneath it. Some cultural practices, proper mowing. You need to mow it at the correct height. I do recommend the higher you can mow it, the higher that your clients or yourself can deal with, the better off you're going to be with the grass. You don't want to cut any more off. What's the book saying? You don't want to cut off any more than 1 inch. So if you're going to mow something down to 2 inches, you need to cut it before it gets 3, because you don't want to cut more than 1 inch off at a time. Dethatching, it's what we did in the lab with Lisa's class with equipment. I actually ran that power rake, and we removed the thatched and what we raked into the wheelbarrows. Aerating, we used a core plugger. We're putting those holes in the ground and allowing air to get down to the roots, and then irrigating. Make sure that if you do have an irrigation system that you're not overwatering. I don't know how many times I can stress to people that irrigation is a good thing if used correctly. You can save water by properly irrigating, because the people that don't have an irrigation system are the ones complaining and saying that's going against the environmental concerns. They're the ones that go and turn the hose on for 2 hours because they turn the hose on with the sprinkler, and then they go to the kids' ball game, they come back, and you see all this water running down the street. But a properly installed and maintained irrigation system is going to put the correct amount at the correct time when the grass needs it, and to keep that grass healthy and thriving. Fertilizing. Being on a proper fertilize program. And a lot of your A lot of your places that you buy your grass seed and fertilizer, they may have a turf care program already kind of designed for you. You know, if you're going to fertilize it 4 or 5 times a year, but you want to make sure that you're keeping your turf grass healthy by doing the correct mowing, the thatching, aerating, keeping it irrigated, and fertilizing. You're going to have less pests in your lawn. And that is going to conclude the first PowerPoint for Unit 3. I will try to have the next one up tomorrow, and I'll have all the lectures up for Unit 3 up by Friday. Guys, take care, and I'll see you in the next lecture.